The morning sun painted the mountains around Hanbiol village in shades of gold and orange. Dongsu stood on his porch, watching the mist rise from the rice fields below. At 73 years old, he had seen many mornings like this, but each one still filled him with peace. The air smelled of fresh earth and growing crops. His daughter, so young, walked up the dirt path carrying a toolbox. Her work clothes were dirty from fixing the water pumps again. She was 35 now, with strong hands and sharp eyes that missed nothing in the village. "The eastern pump is working again, Father," she said, setting down her tools. "But we need new parts soon. The old ones are wearing out." Dongsu nodded. "Make a list. Tae-min can take the hover truck to New Seoul next month for supplies." Tae-min was So-young's husband, a gentle man who could make anything grow. He ran the village farms with the same care that So-young gave to their machines. Together, they kept Hanbiol running smoothly. The village sat in a valley between three mountains on the planet New Jeju. 847 people lived here, growing food and living simple lives. Most families had been here for 3 generations since the first ships came from Earth. The children played in the streams, the old people shared stories, and everyone helped their neighbors. Dr. Minho walked past, carrying his medical bag. He was heading to check on Mrs. Park's new baby. The doctor was younger than So-young, but everyone trusted him completely. He had learned medicine on Earth before coming to New Jeju to help build a new life. "Another healthy baby in our village," Minho called out with a smile. "That makes 12 this year." Dongsu smiled back. Hanbiol was growing, but slowly and safely. That was how he liked it. Near the school, teacher Hai-wan was leading her students in morning exercises. She taught them Earth history, basic science, and the old stories their grandparents brought from Korea. The children laughed as they tried to copy her movements. "Remember," Hai-wan told them, "our ancestors crossed the stars to give us this home. We must honor them by taking care of it." The village had no soldiers or weapons. They grew food, fixed machines, taught children, and cared for the sick. The nearest military base was on New Seoul, 3 days away by ship. Hanbiol was so peaceful that most people forgot there was a war happening in other parts of space. But Dongsu remembered. He had been young when the Velkari Empire first attacked human colonies. The aliens were tall and gray, with 4 arms and cold black eyes. They had stronger weapons and bigger ships than humans. They said humans were taking too much space and had to be stopped. Most people thought the war was far away. The Velkari attacked big cities and military bases, not small farming villages. Hanbiol had nothing the aliens wanted, so they were safe. Or so they thought. High above the planet, Velkari ships moved through space like metal sharks. Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his warship, looking down at New Jeju through the viewing screen. His 4 arms moved across the control panels as he studied the planet below. "The humans have 17 settlements on this world," his officer reported. "Most are small farming villages like this one called Hanbiol." Vextar's black eyes showed no emotion. "Small or large, they are all threats. Humans breed quickly and spread like a disease. We must stop them before they grow stronger. But, sir, these are just farmers. They have no weapons or defenses. Surely they pose no real danger." The commander turned to face his officer. When he spoke, his voice was cold as space. "Every human settlement that survives becomes a base for more humans. Today they grow food. Tomorrow they build factories. Next year they build ships and weapons. We have learned this lesson on 12 other worlds." The officer looked uncomfortable but nodded. The Velkari had been fighting humans for 20 years. Every time they let a human settlement survive, it grew into something bigger and more dangerous. Their orders were clear: remove all human presence from contested worlds. "Begin the attack plan," Vextar ordered. "We will strike during their harvest festival when they are all gathered together. Make it quick and complete. No survivors." Back in Hanbiol, people were preparing for the harvest festival. It was their biggest celebration of the year, when everyone came together to enjoy the fruits of their hard work. So Young and Tai Min were hanging colored lights between the houses. Minho was setting up tables for the feast. Children ran around carrying decorations and getting in everyone's way. Haewon had prepared a special presentation about the village's history. She would tell the story of the first settlers who chose this valley for their new home. Dong-soo would give a speech thanking everyone for another successful year. "This will be our best festival yet," So Young said, stepping back to admire their work. The village square looked beautiful with lights and flowers everywhere. Taemin put his arm around her waist. "Every year you say that, and every year you're right." They didn't know that death was coming from the stars above them. They didn't know that alien ships were already moving into position around their planet. They didn't know that someone had decided their peaceful village was too dangerous to exist. As the sun set behind the mountains, families gathered in the village square. The smell of roasted meat and fresh bread filled the air. Children played games while adults shared news and gossip. Old people told stories about Earth and the early days on New Jeju. Dong-soo stood up to give his speech. The crowd grew quiet, waiting for his words. "My friends," he began, "we gather tonight to celebrate another year of peace and plenty. Our crops are good, our children are healthy, and our community is strong. We have everything we need right here in this valley." People clapped and cheered. They felt safe and happy in their mountain home. "Let us remember those who came before us," Dong-soo continued, "and let us build something good for those who will come after us." As he spoke, his eyes looked up at the stars twinkling above them. Somewhere up there, Earth still turned in space, the home their grandparents had left behind. Other human colonies spread across the galaxy, building new lives on new worlds. But Dong-soo didn't see the dark shapes moving between the stars. He didn't know that tomorrow would bring an end to everything they had built. He only saw his people, safe and happy under the peaceful night sky. The festival continued late into the night with music and dancing and laughter. It was the last night of innocence for the village of Hanbyul. The attack came at dawn, when most of the village was still sleeping off the festival. So Young woke to a sound she had never heard before, the roar of alien engines cutting through the morning air. She rolled out of bed and ran to the window. 3. Massive ships hung in the sky above Hanbyul, their hulls dark gray like storm clouds. They were bigger than anything she had ever seen, each one the size of a city block. Strange lights pulsed along their sides, and she could see smaller ships dropping from their bellies like deadly insects. "Time in!" she shouted, shaking her husband awake. "Get up! We're under attack!" Taemin stumbled to the window and stared in shock. "What are those things?" "Velkari ships," So Young said, her voice tight with fear. She had seen pictures in the news feeds from other worlds. "They're here to kill us all." The first energy blast hit the village center, turning the festival decorations into flames and smoke. The ground shook like an earthquake. Windows shattered in houses all around them. People poured out of their homes, confused and terrified. So Young grabbed her emergency kit from under the bed. Inside were tools, a communication device, and a small weapon her father had insisted she keep. "Get to the tunnels," she told Taemin. "Follow the emergency plan." Every family in Hanbyul knew about the tunnels. Taemin had spent years expanding the old mining shafts under the village, officially for storing crops and equipment. But really, they were escape routes and shelters. Dong-soo had insisted on this after hearing stories from other colonies. Outside, the alien ships were landing in the fields around the village. Tall, gray figures in armor poured out, carrying weapons that crackled with energy. Commander Vextar led them, his forearms moving as he gave orders to his soldiers. "Spread out and search every building," he commanded. "Kill any humans you find. Burn everything that might be useful to them." But the Velkari had made a mistake. They expected to find helpless farmers with no defenses. Instead, they found people who had prepared for this day. So Young ran through the village streets, her communication device crackling with reports from other families. "Grid 7 is clear," came Minho's voice. "Grid 12 is under heavy fire," reported someone else. She reached the hidden control panel behind the old well and flipped the switches inside. All around the village, concealed weapons popped up from fake rocks and dead trees. They were not military-grade weapons, but they were better than nothing. The first Velkari soldier to reach the village square died when a hidden turret opened fire from the roof of the school. His companions scattered, suddenly realizing this would not be the easy slaughter they expected. "What is this?" Vextar snarled into his communicator. "Intelligence said these humans had no defenses." "They're fighting back, sir," came the reply from one of his squad leaders. "They have weapons hidden everywhere." Dongsu appeared beside So Young, carrying an old rifle from the early colony days. Despite his age, his hands were steady and his eyes were fierce. "The children and elderly are in the deep tunnels," he reported. "But we can't hold them off for long." "We don't need to hold them off," So Young replied, watching the tactical display on her device. "We just need to buy time for everyone to get underground." The villagers fought with desperate courage. Heiwan used her knowledge of the local terrain to guide families to safety through hidden paths. Minho ran between the tunnel entrances, treating wounded people and helping them get to safety. Even the teenagers helped, carrying supplies and ammunition to the defenders. But courage was not enough against alien technology. The Velkari weapons could punch through stone walls. Their armor protected them from most human weapons. Slowly, methodically, they pushed deeper into the village. Taemin found So Young crouched behind an overturned farm cart, firing at alien soldiers advancing down the main street. "Most of the families are in the tunnels," he reported, "but the northern entrance is blocked by debris." "Take 20 people through the eastern route," she ordered. "I'll hold this position until everyone is clear." "I'm not leaving you. You have to. Someone needs to lead the survivors. I'll follow as soon as I can." Taemin wanted to argue, but another energy blast reminded him they had no time. He kissed her quickly and ran toward the tunnel entrance, gathering the last groups of villagers. The fighting was fierce but brief. Humans were outnumbered and outgunned. One by one, the defensive positions fell silent. The hidden weapons were destroyed by alien fire. The smell of smoke and burning filled the air. Dongsu found himself cut off from the tunnels, surrounded by Velkari soldiers in the village square. He raised his rifle, knowing it was hopeless, but determined to die fighting. As the aliens closed in, he remembered something his own grandfather had told him about the old wars on Earth. "Sometimes," the old man had said, "the most important thing is not to win, but to make sure others remember what happened here." Dongsu pulled a small device from his pocket, an emergency beacon that could send a message to other human colonies. It would tell them what happened to Hanbiol. Maybe someone would come to avenge them someday. He activated the beacon just as the alien weapons fired. His last thought was of So Young and the others in the tunnels. Maybe they would survive. Maybe they would find a way to make the aliens pay for this day. The beacon's signal raced out into space, carrying its message of destruction and defiance to any human ship that might be listening. Commander Vexitar walked through the burning village, checking that his soldiers had done their work completely. Bodies lay scattered in the streets. Houses burned and collapsed. The pretty decorations from the Harvest Festival were now ash and smoke. "Scan for survivors," he ordered his troops. "Check every building twice." His soldiers spread out with detection equipment, searching for any sign of life. They found storage rooms and workshops, but no hidden tunnels. Taemin had built well. The entrances were perfectly concealed. "No life signs detected, sir," reported the scanning officer. "The settlement is completely destroyed." Vextar nodded with satisfaction. Another human colony removed from the galaxy. Load any useful equipment onto the ships. Then we move to the next target. The Velkari ships lifted off, leaving Hanbiol as a smoking ruin. From space, it looked like every other human settlement they had destroyed. Burned buildings, empty streets, silence where there had once been life. But beneath the ground, in tunnels that the aliens never found, 127 people huddled in the darkness. They had lost their homes, their village, and 720 friends and family members. Many were wounded. All were traumatized. So Young had made it to the tunnels just before the final assault. Now she sat in the main chamber holding Taemin's hand and listening to the reports from the other survivors. The losses were terrible. Whole families wiped out, friends and neighbors dead. What do we do now? Someone whispered in the darkness. So Young thought of her father, who had sacrificed himself to send a warning to other humans. She thought of their destroyed village and their murdered friends. She thought of the aliens who had done this, probably, already moving on to attack the next peaceful settlement. "We survive," she said quietly. "We rebuild, and someday we make them pay for what they did here." The survivors said nothing, but in the darkness she could feel their agreement. The Velkari thought they had won. They thought Hanbiol was just another destroyed village, another small victory in their war against humanity. They were wrong. 5 years passed in the tunnels beneath the dead village of Hanbiol. What had started as emergency shelters became something far more impressive, an underground city that grew larger every month. So Young walked through the main corridor, watching the busy activity around her. People moved with purpose now, no longer the scared refugees who had hidden here after the attack. They had become something new, something harder and more determined than the peaceful farmers they once were. "The eastern expansion is almost finished," reported Hyun Woo, the village's former blacksmith who had become their master builder. "We'll have room for 200 more people by next month," So Young nodded, studying the plans he showed her. The underground city now stretched for miles in every direction, with workshops, living areas, farms, and laboratories carved into the rock. They had built it all with salvaged materials and their own hands. "Any word from the scouts?" she asked. "Ji-woo returned this morning," Hyunwoo replied. "She found another group of refugees from the Myeongdong colony. 37 survivors. They should arrive by tomorrow." Ji-woo had been only 16 when the attack happened. Now she was 21 and one of their best scouts, moving through the mountains to find other human survivors. The Velkari had attacked dozens of colonies, but they never bothered to check if everyone was really dead. There were always a few who escaped. So Young made her way to the command center, a large cavern filled with computers and communication equipment. Most of it had been built from parts scavenged from the wreckage above, but some came from crashed Velkari ships they had, found in the mountains. Dr. Minho looked up from his workstation. "The enhancement program is ready for the next phase," he reported. "We've successfully adapted Velkari biotechnology to human physiology. Volunteers will be stronger, faster, and more resistant to their weapons." The doctor had changed the most of all of them. The gentle village physician was now a scientist who experimented with alien biology. He had learned everything he could from captured Velkari equipment and the bodies of dead aliens. "How many volunteers do we have?" So Young asked. 53 so far, including yourself." So Young had been one of the first to undergo the enhancement process. It had been painful, but now she could lift twice as much weight as before, move faster than any normal human, and see in almost complete darkness. The changes showed in her eyes, which now had flecks of silver in them. Taemin entered the command center carrying a data pad. "The mining operation hit another rich vein," he reported. "We're pulling out more quantium than we can use." The discovery of quantium beneath their village had changed everything. The rare mineral was essential for faster-than-light travel, making it incredibly valuable. More importantly, it explained why the Velkari had attacked. They hadn't just wanted to kill humans. They had wanted the quantium deposits. "How much do we have stored now?" So Young asked. "Enough to power a small fleet for a year," Taemin replied. "And we're only mining a fraction of what's down there. The underground city had become a sophisticated operation. They grew their own food in hydroponic gardens lit by artificial suns. They manufactured their own equipment using 3D printers built from salvaged parts. They even had a small factory producing weapons and armor. But their greatest asset was information. Ji-Woo had become their intelligence chief, building a network of contacts across human space. She sat at her computer station, surrounded by screens showing news feeds, military reports, and intercepted alien communications. "The Velkari are having problems," she reported as So Young approached. "Equipment failures are increasing across their territory. Ships breaking down, weapons malfunctioning, power systems failing." So Young smiled coldly. The equipment failures were not accidents. For 3 years, they had been sending out small teams to sabotage Velkari operations. A loosened bolt here, a corrupted computer chip there, a virus planted in their communication networks. Each action seemed minor, but together they were crippling the alien war machine. "Any response from their high command?" she asked. "General Korthak has ordered security sweeps of all their facilities," Ji-Woo replied. "They're starting to suspect sabotage, but they think it's coming from within their own ranks. Several Velkari officers have been executed for treason." This was exactly what So Young had hoped for. The Velkari were a military society that relied on strict hierarchy and obedience. By making them paranoid about internal threats, she was destroying their unity from within. A new voice interrupted their conversation. "Ma'am, we have incoming refugees." So Young turned to see Sang-ho, a former Earth military officer who had joined them 6 months ago. He had been training their people in proper military tactics, turning farmers and shopkeepers into soldiers. "How many?" she asked. 43 from the Busan settlement. But they're not just refugees. They brought equipment and supplies, including some very interesting weapons." So Young followed Sang-ho to the main entrance tunnel, where the new arrivals were being processed. The leader of the group was a woman named Yu Jin, a scientist who had worked on military projects before the war. "We heard about what you're doing here," Yu Jin said as they met. "Building something to fight back instead of just hiding. We want to join you." "What can you offer?" So Young asked directly. Yu Jin smiled and gestured to the equipment her people were unloading. "I know how to build computer viruses that specifically target Velkari systems. I also brought the plans for some very special weapons that we can manufacture right here." So Young studied the newcomer carefully. Yu Jin was clearly intelligent and determined, but could she be trusted? In the past 5 years, So Young had learned to be suspicious of everyone. "We'll give you a trial period," she decided. "If you prove useful, you can stay. If not—" "Understood," Yu Jin replied. "I think you'll find we can be very useful indeed." That evening, So Young stood in her private chambers, looking at the maps and plans covering her walls. What had started as a desperate plan for survival had become something much larger. They now had over 400 people in the underground city, with more arriving every week. Taemin found her there, as he did most evenings. "You're planning something big," he said. It wasn't a question. "The Velkari think they won," So Young replied. "They think Hanbiol is just another dead human settlement. They have no idea we're still here, growing stronger every day. And when we're strong enough?" So Young turned to face her husband. The gentle farmer had become a hardened survivor, but his eyes still held the kindness she had fallen in love with. "When we're strong enough, we stop hiding, we stop running, we stop letting them choose when and where to fight." "You want to attack them directly?" "I want to destroy them completely." Her voice was cold as the stone around them. "They killed our friends, our family, our neighbors. They burned our home and tried to wipe us out. Now we're going to return the favor." Taman was quiet for a moment. "And after we destroy them? What then?" So Young looked back at her maps, showing Velkari, territory, trade routes, and military bases. "Then we take their place. Someone has to rule this part of space. It might as well be us." Far above them, the ruins of old Hanbiol sat silent under the stars. Weeds grew through the broken buildings. Rain had washed away most traces of the battle that happened there. To any casual observer, it looked like just another dead world, another failed human colony. But beneath the ground, in tunnels that grew deeper and wider every day, humanity was preparing for war. Not the desperate defense they had fought 5 years ago, but a calculated campaign of conquest that would reshape the galaxy. The Velkari had made a mistake when they attacked Hanbiol. They had tried to destroy something peaceful and turned it into something dangerous. Soon they would learn the true cost of that mistake. The Velkari battleship. Dominance shuddered as its main engines failed for the 3rd time in 2 weeks. Commander Vextar stood on the bridge, his forearms clenched in frustration as his engineers scrambled to find the problem. "Report," he demanded. "Unknown. Malfunction in the power coupling system, sir," came the nervous reply. "We're running on backup power only." Vexatar's black eyes narrowed. This was the 5th ship in his fleet to suffer mysterious breakdowns in the past month. Each time, his engineers found nothing obviously wrong, just small failures in critical systems that somehow added up to major problems. What he didn't know was that 3 decks below, a tiny device no bigger than a coin, was sending false signals to the ship's computer, causing microscopic adjustments to engine timing that would eventually destroy the entire propulsion system. The device had been planted there 6 months ago by a human infiltration team led by Sang Ho, the former Earth military officer. Getting aboard had been surprisingly easy. The Velkari were so confident in their superiority that their security was almost non-existent. Back in the underground city beneath Hanbiol, Sang Ho was planning his next mission. The command center now looked like a military headquarters, with tactical displays showing Velkari fleet positions across 3 star systems. "The Dominance will be completely disabled within 48 hours, he reported to So Young. That leaves the Velkari 3rd Fleet with only 6 operational battleships. So Young studied the display, watching red markers that showed damaged or destroyed alien vessels. In 2 years of invisible warfare, they had crippled nearly a third of the Velkari Navy without fighting a single open battle. "What about the supply depot on Keth Moor?" she asked. "Destroyed yesterday," replied Ji Woo from her intelligence station. Yujin's computer virus infected their inventory system and caused a massive explosion in their ammunition storage. They're blaming incompetent workers. Yujin had proven to be their most valuable asset. Her viruses were masterpieces of destructive code that could hide in Velkari computer systems for months before activating. They caused everything from navigation errors to life support failures, and always in ways that looked like accidents or equipment wear. The beauty of it, Yujin had explained to So Young, is that they can't defend against something they don't know exists. They keep looking for saboteurs in their own ranks, instead of realizing the threat comes from outside. The strategy was working perfectly. The Velkari Empire was slowly tearing itself apart as paranoia and equipment failures destroyed their military effectiveness. General Korthik had executed dozens of his own officers, convinced that traitors were everywhere, but So Young knew that sabotage alone would not be enough. They needed to control something the Velkari couldn't live without. That something was Quantium. "Status report on Operation Chokehold," she ordered. Taman stepped forward with a satisfied smile. "All major Quantium mining operations in Velkari space are now under our control. They don't know it yet, but every shipment of Quantium they receive has been intercepted and replaced with our own supply." This was perhaps their most ambitious plan. Using the vast quantium deposits beneath Hanbiol, they had created a secret network of suppliers who slowly replaced Velkari quantium with their own. The alien empire was now completely dependent on human-controlled resources without realizing it. And the quality of our quantium? So Young asked. Deliberately inferior. Taman replied with a cold smile. Just pure enough to work, but not pure enough to work well. Their ships are getting slower, their weapons are getting weaker, and they think it's just normal wear and tear. Dr. Minho approached with his daily report on the enhancement program. We now have 347 enhanced personnel ready for active duty. Physical capabilities are 2 to 3 times normal human levels, and they're completely immune to standard Velkari stunning weapons. The enhancement program had been controversial at first. Many of the survivors didn't want to change their bodies, even to become stronger. But as reports came in of other human colonies being destroyed, more volunteers stepped forward. Any side effects? So Young asked. Minor changes in appearance. The silver flecks in the eyes, slightly increased height and muscle mass. But no, negative effects on health or psychology. In fact, enhanced personnel show improved resistance to stress and trauma. So Young nodded. She had been enhanced for over 2 years now and felt better than she ever had in her life. The process had made her not just physically stronger, but mentally sharper and more focused. A chime from the communication system interrupted their meeting. Jiwoo looked up from her station with excitement. Incoming message from our contact on Velkarus. Priority 1. Velkarus was the Velkari capital world, the heart of their empire. Getting a spy there had taken months of careful planning, but the information they provided was invaluable. Put it through, So Young ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was distorted for security, but the words were clear enough. The Supreme Council is meeting tomorrow to discuss the crisis. General Korthak is demanding more resources to investigate the sabotage. Chancellor Vorthan wants to abandon 3 outer systems because they're too expensive to defend. So Young felt a thrill of satisfaction. The Velkari leadership was starting to crack under the pressure. Any mention of human involvement? None. They still think all their problems are internal. Korthak executed another admiral yesterday for incompetence and possible treason. After the transmission ended, So Young called her inner circle together: Taimin, Sangho, Jiwoo, Yujin, Minho, and Hyunwoo. These 6 people had become her generals in the invisible war against the Velkari. It's time for the next phase, she announced. We've weakened them enough through sabotage. Now we start taking territory. Sangho leaned forward eagerly. Military strikes? Not yet. First, we take control of their economy. Every quantium shipment, every supply convoy, every trade route. We make them completely dependent on us. And then we start making demands. Yujin smiled. And if they refuse? Then we cut off their quantium supply and watch their empire collapse. So Young's voice was cold and calculating. But I don't think they'll refuse. They're too arrogant to believe that humans could pose a real threat. Over the next months, the invisible war escalated. Human teams struck at Velkari facilities across dozens of worlds, always making their attacks look like accidents or internal sabotage. Quantium shipments were delayed or lost. Computer systems crashed at critical moments. Weapons malfunctioned. During training exercises, the Velkari response was exactly what So Young had hoped for. They turned on each other. Paranoid about traitors in their ranks, they began arresting their own officers and scientists. Military units were recalled from the front lines to investigate security breaches that didn't exist. General Korthak stood in his command center on Velkarus, staring at reports of yet another equipment failure. 3 more ships had suffered. Engine breakdowns, a supply depot had exploded, and 2 of his best admirals had been found dead in their quarters under mysterious circumstances. This cannot be coincidence, he growled to his aide. Someone is deliberately sabotaging our operations. Our investigations have found no evidence of organized resistance, the aide replied nervously. All incidents appear to be isolated equipment failures or personnel errors. Then our investigations are inadequate. Korthak slammed his fist on the console. Double the security sweeps. Execute anyone who shows even the slightest sign of disloyalty, and find me someone to blame for this disaster. What Korthak didn't know was that his aide was one of their own officers who had been captured and replaced by a human infiltrator 6 months ago. Every order he gave, every plan he made, was immediately transmitted to the underground city beneath. Hanbyol So Young received the intelligence reports with growing satisfaction. The Velkari Empire was consuming itself from within, just as she had planned. Their military was weakened, their economy was failing, and their leadership was paralyzed by paranoia. But she knew this was only the beginning. The invisible war had served its purpose, weakening the enemy and preparing the battlefield. Soon, it would be time for the visible war, the final campaign that would destroy the Velkari Empire completely. In the depths of the underground city, thousands of enhanced humans trained for that coming battle. They practiced with weapons that combined human ingenuity with captured Velkari technology. They studied tactical plans that would turn the aliens' own strengths against them. The farmers of Hanbyol were gone, destroyed in the attack 5 years ago. In their place had risen something far more dangerous, an army of enhanced humans led by a woman who had learned to think like her enemies and fight like a predator. The Velkari had tried to wipe out a peaceful village. Instead, they had created the force that would destroy their empire. General Korthak stood before the Supreme Council on Velkaris, his 4 arms gesturing angrily as he delivered his report. The great council chamber was filled with the most powerful Velkari in the empire, their black eyes reflecting the holographic displays that showed the deteriorating military situation. The sabotage has been traced to its source, he announced. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual activity on the world designated as New Jeju, specifically in the region where we destroyed the human settlement called Hanbyol. Chancellor Vorthon leaned forward with interest. You believe the sabotage is coming from a dead world? Not dead, Korthak replied grimly. Our analysis suggests that humans survived our attack and have been operating from underground facilities. They are responsible for the systematic destruction of our military capabilities. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Several councilors demanded immediate action, while others questioned how humans could have survived what was supposed to be a complete extermination. Impossible, declared Admiral Zektor. I personally oversaw the destruction of that settlement. Every human was confirmed dead. Obviously not, Korthak shot back. The evidence is undeniable. Quantium shipments that should have come from our mines are being replaced with inferior supplies. Equipment failures follow patterns that suggest deliberate sabotage. Computer viruses are spreading through our networks from a single source point, the New Jeju system. Chancellor Vorthon raised his hand for silence. Regardless of how they survived, what matters now is eliminating this threat. What do you propose, General? Total sterilization, Korthak replied without hesitation. I will take the entire 5th Fleet to New Jeju and reduce the planet to molten rock. No underground facility can survive orbital bombardment with antimatter weapons. The vote was unanimous. Every councilor agreed that the human threat must be eliminated completely this time. They had made the mistake of underestimating humans once before. They would not make it again. 3 days later, the largest Velkari fleet ever assembled dropped out of hyperspace around New Jeju. 50 warships hung in orbit around the planet, their weapons charged and ready to turn the surface into a sea of fire. On the bridge of his flagship Retribution, General Korthak studied the sensor readings from the planet below. Full spectrum scan, he ordered. I want to know exactly where these humans are hiding. The results were puzzling. The sensors showed extensive underground structures beneath the ruins of Hanbyol, But the energy readings were far higher than expected. Whatever the humans had built down there was much larger and more sophisticated than a simple hiding place. "Sir," reported his scanning officer, "we're detecting massive power sources in what appears to be a manufacturing facility. The underground complex extends for several kilometers in all directions." Korthak felt a chill of unease. This was not what he had expected to find. "Broadcast a surrender demand," he ordered. "Give them one chance to come out peacefully before we begin bombardment." Far below, in the command center of the underground city, So Young received the alien transmission with calm satisfaction. This was the moment she had been preparing for during 5 years of careful planning. "They want us to surrender," Ji-Woo reported from her communication station. "They're giving us 1 hour to come to the surface with our hands up." So Young smiled coldly. "Open a channel to their flagship." The transmission went out on all frequencies, ensuring that every ship in the Velkari fleet would hear her words. When she spoke, her voice was clear and confident. "General Korthak, this is So Young of Hanbyol. You destroyed our village and murdered our families 5 years ago. Now you've come back to finish the job, but you've made a mistake. You waited too long." On the bridge of the Retribution, Korthak stared at the communication display in shock. The human female looking back at him had silver flecks in her eyes and an expression of absolute confidence. "Surrender now," she continued, "and we will allow you to live as prisoners. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why attacking Hanbayol was the worst mistake your empire ever made." Korthak's rage overrode his surprise. "You dare threaten us? We have 50 warships in orbit around your pathetic world. You have nothing but holes in the ground." So Young's smile widened. "General, you're about to learn something important about humans. We adapt, we survive, and we always find a way to turn our enemies' strengths into weaknesses." She gestured to Hyunwoo at the weapons control station. "Show them what we've built." All around the underground city, massive blast doors opened in the mountainsides. What emerged made the Velkari sensors scream warnings as they tried to process what they were seeing. Weapon platforms rose from concealed positions, each one bristling with cannons that used reverse-engineered Velkari technology. But these weren't simple copies. Human engineering had improved on the original designs, making them more powerful and more accurate than anything in the alien fleet. "Impossible," breathed Korthak's scanning officer. "Those energy readings—" "Sir, some of those weapons are more powerful than our ship's main guns." But that wasn't the real surprise. As the Velkari fleet watched in growing alarm, ships began emerging from hidden bays carved into the mountains. Not crude human vessels, but sleek fighters and destroyers that combined human innovation with Velkari technology. "Where did they get ships?" demanded Admiral Zektor over the communication system. "They built them," Korthak realized with growing horror. "These humans have been building a fleet for years, right under our noses." So Young's voice came through the speakers. Again. "Every piece of equipment you've lost to sabotage over the past 2 years has found its way here. Every Quantium shipment you thought was delivered has actually been diverted to our shipyards. You've been supplying us with the materials to build the weapons we're about to use against you." The human fleet was smaller than the Velkari force, only 20 ships compared to 50. But every human vessel was crewed by enhanced personnel who could think and react faster than normal humans. Every weapon system had been optimized for maximum effectiveness against Velkari armor and shields. "Begin the attack," So Young ordered. Calmly, the space battle that followed was unlike anything the Velkari had ever experienced. They expected to face desperate humans in improvised ships, but instead found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to know their every weakness. Human fighters swarmed around Velkari battleships like angry insects, their weapons targeting specific points where armor was thinnest. The surface-based weapons platforms provided covering fire, their massive cannons reaching far into space to support the attacking fleet. "They know our shield frequencies," reported one Velkari captain as his ship's defenses failed under human fire. "They're targeting our weak points exactly." They were indeed. 5 years of captured equipment and intercepted communications had given the humans complete knowledge of Velkari technology. Every ship design, every weapon system, every defensive measure. The humans knew them all and had prepared counters for each one. Korthak watched in growing despair as his fleet was systematically destroyed. The humans fought with cold precision, showing no mercy and making no mistakes. Ship after ship fell to their coordinated attacks. "General," called his tactical officer, "the humans are broadcasting on all channels. They're demanding our surrender." "Never," Korthak snarled. "All ships ramming speed. If we're going to die, we'll take as many of them with us as possible." But even this desperate tactic failed. The human ships were faster and more maneuverable than Velkari vessels. They danced around the charging alien ships, picking them off, one by one with precise weapon strikes. In the end, only 3 Velkari ships remained operational, including Korthak's flagship. The rest of the fleet floated dead in space, their hulls torn open and their crews either dead or captured. "Surrender now," came So Young's voice over the communication system, "or join the rest of your fleet in death." Korthak looked around his damaged bridge at the few surviving crew members. His great fleet was destroyed, his empire's most powerful military force reduced to wreckage. The humans had not just defeated them, they had humiliated them. "We surrender," he said quietly. The human boarding parties that came to secure the Velkari ships moved with military precision. They were all enhanced humans, stronger and faster than their alien prisoners. But what struck Korthak most was their discipline. No revenge killings, no unnecessary cruelty, just efficient capture and containment. He found himself face to face with So Young in his own command center. Up close, she was smaller than he had expected, but there was something in her silver-flecked eyes that made him instinctively step back. "5 years ago," she said conversationally, "you stood in my village square and watched your soldiers burn everything my people had built. You thought you were eliminating a threat to your empire." Korthak said nothing. What was there to say? "You were right to see us as a threat," So Young continued. "But your mistake was thinking you could eliminate us by killing us. Instead, you just made us stronger, smarter, and angrier. Now your fleet is destroyed, your empire is crippled, and you're going to help us finish what you started." "Help you?" Korthak couldn't hide his confusion. So Young smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Oh yes, General. You're going to help us conquer." 10 years had passed since the space battle above New Jeju, and the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. What had once been the Velkari Empire was now the human Velkari Federation, with its capital on the former Velkari homeworld of Velkarus. So Young stood on the observation deck of the former Supreme Council building, looking out over the bustling city below. Velkari and humans worked side by side in the streets, building something new from the ashes of the old empire. The sight still amazed her sometimes. "The quarterly production reports," said Tae-min, entering with a data pad in his hands. He wore the formal robes of the Federation's agricultural minister now, but his gentle manner hadn't changed. "Food production is up 18% across all worlds. The new farming techniques are working perfectly." So Young nodded, taking the report. Tae-min had revolutionized agriculture across dozens of worlds, combining human knowledge with Velkari technology to feed populations that had been struggling for years under the old empire's harsh rule. "Any problems with the integration programs?" she asked. "A few isolated incidents, but nothing serious. Most Velkari have accepted the new system. They're actually happier now than they were under the old military government." This had been the most surprising development of the past decade. Rather than fighting the human conquest, most Velkari had welcomed it. The old empire had been a military dictatorship that crushed dissent and exploited its citizens. The new Federation offered something they had never experienced: freedom and prosperity. Jiwoo entered the office, now wearing the uniform of the Federation Intelligence. "Service. The Outer Rim integration is complete," she reported. "The last 3 Velkari holdout systems have agreed to join the Federation. That makes us the dominant power in this entire galactic sector." "Any sign of external threats?" So Young asked. "Long range. Scouts report contact with the Zenthari Republic on our eastern border. They seem curious about our rapid expansion, but not immediately hostile. I recommend opening diplomatic channels." So Young approved the suggestion. The Federation was strong now, but she had no desire to repeat the Velkari's mistake of making unnecessary enemies. Better to seek alliance and trade where possible. Dr. Minho arrived next, carrying his usual collection of research reports. He had become the Federation's chief medical officer, overseeing hospitals and research facilities across 50 worlds. "The enhancement program is ready for civilian trials," he announced. "We can now offer the improvements to any citizen who wants them, not just military personnel." "Voluntary only," So Young emphasized. "No one should be forced to change their body." Of course, we've learned from the Velkari's mistakes about forced compliance. Freedom of choice is one of our founding principles. This was perhaps the biggest difference between the old empire and the new Federation. The Velkari had ruled through fear and force. The humans ruled through cooperation and mutual benefit. It turned out that most people preferred prosperity and freedom over military glory and conquest. Yu Jin knocked and entered, now serving as the Federation's technology minister. "The new shipyards are operational," she reported with satisfaction. "We're producing vessels that are 50% more efficient than the old Velkari designs. Our exploration fleet will be able to reach previously inaccessible star systems." "Exploration, not conquest," So Young reminded her. "Understood, though if we happen to find resources or trading partners," So Young smiled. "Then we negotiate. Fair agreements, just like we've done with everyone else." The Federation's expansion had been remarkably peaceful. Unlike the Velkari, who had conquered through military force, the humans offered partnership and mutual benefit. Most civilizations they encountered chose to join voluntarily rather than face the economic disadvantage of staying outside the growing Federation. Sang-Ho was the last to arrive, still wearing military dress but now as Minister of Defense rather than a rebel commander. "The security situation is stable across all Federation worlds," he reported. "Crime rates are down, economic indicators are up, and military recruitment is actually exceeding our needs." "Recruitment from which species?" So Young asked. "Both human and Velkari, plus volunteers from 6 other species that have joined us. Turns out that when you treat people well and give them something worth fighting for, they're eager to serve." This too had been unexpected. The old Velkari military had been held together by discipline and fear. The new Federation forces were unified by shared purpose and mutual respect. They were smaller than the old Empire's army, but far more effective. Her ministers left to attend to their duties. So Young remained on the observation deck, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. The peaceful farming village of Hanbyol seemed like a lifetime ago, but she could still remember every detail of that last harvest festival before the attack. 720 people had died that day. She had never forgotten their names, or their faces. In the memorial garden beneath the rebuilt Hanbyol, each victim was remembered with a plaque and a growing tree. The garden was beautiful now, a place of peace where children played among the monuments to the dead. But the real memorial was what they had built from that tragedy. An empire of 12 star systems, home to billions of beings living in freedom and prosperity. It wasn't the life her father had planned for her, but she thought he would be proud of what she had accomplished. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Jiwoo's face appeared on the wall display, looking excited. "Ma'am, we're receiving a signal from deep space. It's from Earth." So Young felt her heart skip. Earth had been silent for decades, cut off from the colonies by the war and the vast distances of space. Put it through. The face that appeared on the screen was unmistakably human, though aged by years of hard travel. This is Captain Lee of the Earthship New Dawn. We've been searching for surviving human colonies for the past 15 years. When we received the emergency beacon from Han Biol, that beacon is still broadcasting, So Young realized. Her father's final message was still reaching out across the stars, telling anyone who would listen that humans had been attacked but survived. We followed the signal here and, frankly, we're amazed by what we've found. Intelligence reports say you've built an entire interstellar government. How is that possible? So Young smiled. It's a long story, Captain. Why don't you land and we'll tell you everything. You might be interested to know that we have room for more ships in our exploration fleet. After the communication ended, So Young stood alone on the observation deck, watching the sun set over the Velkari capital that was now her city. In the distance, she could see the construction sites where new buildings rose every day, built by humans and Velkari working together. It had taken 10 years to transform from refugees hiding in underground tunnels to rulers of a galactic federation. But every step had been guided by the same principle. Never again would anyone be able to destroy a peaceful community without consequences. The memorial beacon from Han Biol still broadcast its message across the galaxy. We are still here. We remember. We endure. But now it carried a new meaning. It wasn't a cry for help from desperate survivors. It was a promise from a power that had learned to turn tragedy into strength. Other alien empires in distant parts of the galaxy had heard stories of the rapid rise of the human Velkari Federation. Some dismissed the tales as impossible exaggerations. Others began making diplomatic overtures, hoping to establish friendly relations with this new power. But a few, those who had their own histories of conquest and cruelty, began to worry. If a small farming village could become a galactic empire, what might happen to those who threatened it? In the rebuilt village of Han Biol, now a beautiful town surrounded by parks and monuments, children played in the same fields where their grandparents had grown rice and corn. They learned the old stories in school. How their ancestors had crossed the stars to build new lives, how enemies had tried to destroy them, and how courage and determination had transformed loss into victory. The underground city still existed, beneath the town, but now it served as a museum and research facility rather than a hiding place. Visitors came from across the Federation to see where the great transformation had begun, to understand how farmers and shopkeepers had become the founders of a new order in the galaxy. So Young returned to Han Biol often, walking through the memorial garden and visiting the graves of those who hadn't lived to see their village become the heart of an empire. She would stand by her father's monument and tell him about the latest developments, new worlds joining the Federation, trade agreements with distant civilizations, scientific discoveries that would benefit billions of people. We kept our promise. Father, she would say, we survived. We remembered, and we made sure that what happened here would never happen to anyone else. The village that the Velkari had tried to wipe out now ruled their former capital. The farmers they had dismissed, as harmless, had become the founders of the most powerful government in this part of the galaxy. It was perhaps the greatest reversal of fortune in galactic history, and it had all begun with the simple human refusal to accept defeat, the determination to turn tragedy into triumph, and the recognition that sometimes the best way to honor the dead is to build something better.